it was a very tight game that I don't think he needed to press, and I think he'll learn that as we go. Especially, he's fortunate right now. He's got a great defense on the other side of the ball. We're really good on special teams, and he doesn't have to force some of those issues. But I think also he looked at the game and thought there were some easy things in that game where he can let the easy things be easy, and he doesn't have to press on that. So all in all, I think he started to play football in the second half the way he's capable of playing.
Arch Manning walked onto the field with a last name that echoes through football history and somehow managed to make it look like he'd never seen a football before. His debut wasn't just bad, it was a full-blown comedy special, and Steve Sarkisian wasn't laughing. Sarkisian's patience snapped as he watched a Manning air turn into a blooper reel, exploding in frustration at the Golden Boy who delivered less than 0 in his much-hyped debut.
I put most of the blame on Sarkisian more so than I put it on Arch Manning. He wasn't impressive. Again, he was not impressive, and he's got to show up, and I don't want to hear another word about him as a Heisman Trophy candidate, a Heisman finalist, and all of this. Nah, I don't want to hear that now. You got to go out there and show when you're the man every single Saturday that you can step up and handle your business. That's what he has to do, and I believe he will do it. But when it comes to Sarkisian, you've been around too long. And to go out there and call such a pedestrian game, I really, really was so unimpressed with what I had big expectations for Sarkisian.
What made Arch Manning's debut so embarrassing wasn't just the stats, it was the optics. Here was the crown prince of football royalty, hyped since middle school, plastered on every recruiting headline, handed the spotlight as if destiny itself had written his name on the starting roster. And when the moment came, he crumbled like a stale cookie. Sarkisian, who staked his reputation on Texas football's resurgence, watched in horror as his star recruit looked less like Peyton or Eli, and more like a backup from a forgotten community college team.
What's your biggest takeaway from Arch's performance versus Ohio State?
He was underwhelming. He was suboptimal. Just fill in the blank here. Mostly he was terrible. And I think the biggest problem he had was the other side completely outmatched him, not only offensively, physically, but scheme-wise. And I know a lot of people are hitting the panic button and saying that he will be a bust. He was a bust in his first game of this season, but I don't think he will be long-term. In the 12-team playoff.
The meltdown was brutal. Sarkisian, already under pressure from boosters, fans, and the ghost of Texas glory days, couldn't hide his rage. Arch was supposed to be the savior, the quarterback to put Texas back where it belonged, but instead, Sarkisian got a debut that looked like a highlight reel for the opposing defense. Every missed read, every awkward throw, every sack, it was as if Arch's playbook had been swapped with a manual for disaster. Sarkisian exploded, not just at the mistakes, but at the humiliation of watching his program become a punchline.
No positive way to spin it. Steve Sarkisian tried. I'll puncture holes in it. But folks, I vow after watching Arch Manning Saturday struggle, 26 passing yards in the first half, okay? I watch him miss guys open all day. I vow never again to talk about Arch Manning as the #1 overall pick until he actually, shows us something, okay? And I'm rooting for Arch. I got buddies who went to the University of Texas. We got 2 guys on staff here who love the Texas Longhorns. I'm excited.
For a coach like Sarkisian, who's built his reputation on offensive genius, watching Arch fumble through the basics was like a chef watching someone burn microwave popcorn. The Manning name didn't soften the blow, it made it worse. Because when your last name is Manning, failure isn't just a bad game, it's a national headline. Fans weren't just disappointed, they were mortified. How could the kid from football royalty look this unprepared, this overwhelmed, this utterly lost? Sarkisian's outburst wasn't just about the game, it was about the betrayal of expectations.
But I had big expectations for Sarkisian, what we know him to be as a coach, as an offensive play caller, as an offensive coordinator. I think he came up flagrantly short, almost to the point where he was compromised because he was too busy in trying to protect Arch Manning as opposed to coaching him. And I think that that's the indictment to make on this particular morning. You can make a legitimate argument that Steve Sarkisian got just as caught up in all the hype and hoopla and everything surrounding Arch Manning as Arch Manning supposedly did.
And let's be real, this wasn't some low-pressure debut in obscurity. Arch Manning has been branded as the future since he was a teenager. ESPN drooled over his highlight tapes. Recruiting sites treated him like the second coming. Texas practically threw a parade when he signed. Sarkisian sold him as the quarterback who'd lead Texas into the SEC era with swagger. And what did Sark get in return? A debut so catastrophic that fans were checking the roster to make sure they weren't watching a walk-on.
We got to start with Arch Manning and the much anticipated debut. It happened Saturday in Columbus. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been waiting for this for 2 years. Okay, Arch had played a little bit at Texas, but they've been slow playing this. We got something. We got a Manning. Boy, you guys cannot wait to see this guy. He came in as the Heisman favorite. Okay? He's been hyped. Media loves this guy. This was a spectacular failure on every level for Arch Manning in Texas. And
Sarkisian's explosion wasn't just anger, it was survival. Coaches at Texas live under a microscope. One bad game can turn into donor panic, media storms, and calls for replacements. Sarkisian knew that Arch Manning's embarrassing performance wasn't just a setback. It was ammunition for every critic waiting to pounce. He wasn't just yelling at Arch. He was screaming at the possibility that his golden ticket to Texas redemption had already punched the wrong side of the card.
You know, it was a weird early start for you. You got pinned deep a couple of times, and some Buckeye fans were like, we gained a couple of 100 yards. But my takeaway was, and I said this, from the television set, I could see how uncomfortable Arch Manning was. And I said, if I was Ryan Day, I would have gotten on my headset and said, guys, this is bad field position. Get out of here. Let's not take big swings.
The irony of it all is delicious. The Manning family has given football legends, icons who thrive under pressure. And yet Arch, the most hyped of them all, face-planted when the spotlight hit. Sarkisian's eruption was fueled by that cruel reality. He had inherited a kid with the Manning name, but none of the Manning magic, at least not in that debut. And when your fan base is chanting, Texas is back every offseason, an embarrassing debut isn't just bad luck, it's sacrilege.
Arch Manning, that was a tough go.
Tough.
That was a tough go. Matt Patricia's, Dan Orlovsky did it. Now, Dan Orlovsky was pro Arch Manning, so Dan Orlovsky is going to get on the side of Arch being screwed here. Arch being held back. Sarkisian is giving him a limited offense, which might be true. Sarkisian might have done that. And then he also pointed out a lot of things that Matt Patricia was doing to Arch Manning. We've seen numerous film breakdowns now from Dan Orlovsky where Patricia would show one thing, almost like the amoeba defense that the Ravens do. Sure. And then they have somebody handing in dirt, then they're dropping back.
Fans didn't just roast Arch online. They roasted Sarkisian for putting him out there. Memes flooded in before the game even ended. Comparisons to Uncle Eli's awkward interceptions and Peyton's rookie struggles were brutal, but Arch didn't even hit that bar. At least those Mannings showed flashes of greatness. Arch showed flashes of a player who looked like he'd wandered onto the field by mistake. Sarkisian's eruption was the sound of a man realizing his gamble on football royalty had just blown up in front of millions.
Best offensive play caller in America. He just did not dial up very much. He was outmanned on the defensive side by Ohio State. And I came away optimistic that Arch would get better, but that's not what we were expecting, and that's not what we got.
From the very beginning, even Dan, look, far be it from me to be reading the eyes and the body language of big-time football players. You would know that better than I, but I expected him to come out on that field just based on what we've heard him say and stuff, with a little swagger, like, look what I'm about, hey, everybody, look what I'm about to do here. And it didn't look that way. It looked like it was a big moment for him.
Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You know, you're going on the road to the defending national champion playing against the defense that played.
And here's the kicker. In the high-stakes world of Texas football, there's no such thing as patience. Fans don't want to hear about learning curves. They don't want to hear about nerves or inexperience. They want dominance, swagger, and wins. Arch Manning's debut delivered none of that, and Steve Sarkisian knew it. His explosion wasn't just fury at Arch, it was desperation to send a message. Mediocrity won't cut it. Not in Austin. Not with the SEC on the horizon. Not with a name like Manning under center.
Quarterback of Texas.
He started quarterback of Texas, and this is his first time being the starter. But he's a junior. He's been there for a couple years, and I was surprised that how his mechanics look, like his throwing mechanics. He has some off. Yeah, I don't mind his sidearm, but just the total body, not stepping into it, doing things off the back foot. Not something you expect, especially from a Manning.
In the aftermath, the questions swirl. Is Arch Manning truly cut out for this level? Or is he a product of hype gone wild? Did Sarkisian mismanage him, throwing him into the fire before he was ready? Or is this the cold truth that a famous last name doesn't guarantee greatness? Lindy Lee could roast Obama for empty promises, but Sarkisian just lived through the football version, a kid with endless hype delivering nothing but embarrassment.
This isn't Louisiana Monroe. This isn't the teams he's popped in last year and played against. Like, this is the defending, reigning, really good Ohio State football team. Like, you're not that red dot that he said that they were swinging at everybody else. That motherfucker must be broken or something, because that did not look like the number one team in the country today at all. And it was an all-time quote. I'm cool for it, but if you're going to walk out like that with the gap, you better back it up.
Yeah. One thing is certain, Sarkisian's explosion will define the start of Arch Manning's career. The video clips will live forever. Texas's coach, red-faced and fuming, tearing into the quarterback who was supposed to be untouchable. For Arch, the debut isn't just a bad game. It's a scarlet letter, a reminder that in college football, your name buys you hype, but your performance defines your legacy. And Sarkisian wasn't about to let that legacy drag him down.
You guys know my stance on this one. If the last name Manning wasn't on the back of his jersey, he wouldn't be the number one overall pick, Heisman Trophy winner, the number one team in the country. It's an enormous amount of pressure for a kid, Joey, that hasn't started a complete season. What did you make out of what you saw from him?
All that stuff, all the talk before the game, doesn't matter whatsoever. If you're Texas and you're Manning, you need him to hit. You mentioned the third down, 5-yard pass. It's 3rd and 5. Game changer. You're down 7, you got to hit that. He didn't play like we expected him to play in this game, and honestly, he didn't play like a college football quarterback playing for number one team in the country.
Arch Manning has a mountain to climb. For now, he's not the prodigy, not the savior, not the golden boy. He's the kid who bombed his debut and set his coach off like a firework. And Steve Sarkisian's explosion wasn't just about disappointment. It was a public announcement that Texas football doesn't have time to babysit. The Manning era in Austin didn't begin with glory. It began with humiliation, and Sarkisian made sure everyone knew it.